Hey everybody, and welcome back to the stream one more time. We are back on Carside Chat, and today we're talking about the legendary Countach and where it's gone from here. Crazy stuff for the anniversary. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, and welcome back. This is your host, Primo, and I forgot my logo thing again, man. I just stink at this. That was it right there, big old Primo. So make sure you follow me. I have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all sorts of fun stuff. You can follow me there. The great news is that now we're not just here. We're actually now on Spotify. We're on Google Podcast. We're on what else? I don't know. We're on a ton of stuff right now. Apple. Apple. I don't know. You guys are better than this. Apple, Spotify, Google. That's the big ones, right? I don't know. Whatever it is. I'm on all of those. So I'm really excited about that, to have this new kind of platform to say our voice. And you can see things have changed here. I got a lot of stuff that I really need to work on to make this whole rig work right. And I'm telling you, you guys with the live streaming stuff, you guys are good at it. I am really impressed with your ability. It's something that I don't know. I'm trying to get to it. So I see all this stuff and I just want to buy the $20,000 thing where I press the button and I do it. It's real easy, blah, blah, blah. But I end up with kind of a system where I'm like kind of fighting myself out. And I do more soundboard stuff, and I do stuff where I want to make phone calls and have people on meetings and stuff like that, which I do want to have down the road. We're gonna have Zoom meetings. I just really need to figure out how this system works so we can get it. We might just do it in pieces. I don't know. We'll see how that comes about, but that's really not the story for today. The story for today is the Countach. I don't know. Have you guys? It's what got me into the car scene. A lot of people I've said this about. Obviously, my grandfather and my family got me into it at the very beginning. There was always this big Ford versus Chevy fight that was in us. I'm actually from the Martinsville, Virginia area. So Martinsville is NASCAR country, and you're always going to get that fight. It's always the Ford versus Chevy. But we went to see Smokey and the Bandit, and that was the one where I kind of fell in love with the Trans Am. For most of my life, I've really owned kind of the Trans Am thing. But when I moved to Massachusetts in about, I want to say, I think it was 87, a little bit before that, but I remember it really kind of sparking it in 87 was I moved up here and I opened up a magazine and there was this Countach, and that thing was just, it kind of hit something. It was like the spark plug that, fired the ignition, and all of a sudden it was like, I feel like I could be a car guy. And that's why I've owned the 944. That's why I loved all these different cars. And I remember we went and had a Countach priced out at the time. It was, like I said, it was 87. I think we priced it out. It was around $150,000. It was $2,000 down, and my insurance would be $2,000 a month for my insurance, and then it would have been $2,000 a month for the payment for it. So I kind of said, I don't think I'm kind of ready for that right now. But I ended up buying an 82 Trans Am at the time, and that was the car that I actually got my license with in the middle of a snowstorm. So I remember driving, and they said, we're going to do all these tests with you and do this stuff. And then the car in front of me crashed, and this car that was supposed to be really bad in the ice, the guy in front of me crashed, and I just drove around him. I was like, no big deal. And he was like, you know what, we're just turning around right now and going back, because I think it was more of a safety issue. But the idea that I didn't crash, we were all thinking we were going to reschedule. No, he goes, you know what, you made it that far. He didn't say anything, like he didn't hype you up or say, I'm impressed with you driving or anything. But you could tell that he was just kind of like, here's the stamp, you can now drive a car. So that was my history from there. And it really just kind of bled from there. I just continued to have this love for the Countach. I kind of got out of cars for a long time, but I was still kind of driving and being into doing car shows and car meets and that kind of thing. But what most of you guys probably do is kind of the hit pieces where it's like I'm just going to do what I can do at the time. But then when it came back to the 2000s, then I finally it was my new marriage. Everything in my life was actually finally going right. And I was getting back into cars. I went into car sales, cars repair. And then after that, I went back to this kind of thing about, where do I go from here? And one of the local companies picked up the Lamborghini brand. I was friends with some guys that worked with Lamborghini from the corporate level. And I said, hey, I heard these guys are picking this thing up. And they said, yeah, this is when we're signing the paperwork. This is when everything's going to go down. So I emailed the owner of the company. He forwarded my information down, and in December 2nd of 2009, I was suddenly selling Lamborghinis. And once you're in the family, you're in the family, and that's how it went from there. So that was the thing is if you're in that passion for that kind of brand, and I'm sure you guys, you don't have to be Lamborghini, you don't have to be whatever thing you have a passion for, if it really drives you forward. I remember telling people before I got the job that I already had it, that I was getting the job. And it was weird because I stayed with that for a long time until it was like, I've opened a couple of other businesses. And the thing I learned, and I hate to say it like this because I really wanted to stick with the brand for a long time, but you learn that if you work selling a car, that there's a good chance you're not going to buy a car. So I had to go and do some other stuff. And then I always say this is that these cars are not the goal. The cars are the reward for people who have goals. So here's my thing. Have a goal, set yourself a standard, and then move forward from there. And you'll find yourself in a much better position. Right now, I'm not by where I need to be, no. But I'm on a pace right now that sooner or later down the road, I will be able to afford my Lamborghini. I'll be able to buy the car that I want to. And it's very exciting to be able to move from buying a car. I bought my last car with cash. It was really cool to be able to drive away, and I still have that same car today. And then with the 944 Turbo, I don't know, that might be going away real soon. I might be having something to replace that. I don't want to give anything away. Recently, and the thing is, like I said, many of these people, you guys, everybody got onto the Countach. I'm sure you opened your first magazine, you pulled up that Countach, and you said, man, this is the car. I want to drive it. I want to own it. But for most people, these cars ended up on, your wall. You ended up being a thing. But recently, Lamborghini, the Countach, is on its 50th anniversary. And to do that, Lamborghini's Polo Storico, they just spent 25,000 hours on this vehicle you're seeing here, rebuilding that's the first prototype from the 1971 Countach LP500. And it's just as it was unveiled in the 1971 Geneva Motor Show. The original car was crash tested, but the buyer Albert and Rita Spice wanted the original. So the team over there used manuals, the reference pictures, and if they couldn't get a part, they fabricated it. Even the paint itself, which is the original Giallo Fly Special. The value of this car is expected to be in the millions, but to some, this would be considered a priceless vehicle. So I want to hear what you guys, this is the thing for it. This is very exciting to hear this. I'm hoping that this comes out right. We tested it. It seemed to be working, but if it didn't, no big deal. This is what the car sounds like. I hope that's got volume to it. That is so distinct. So that's just the specific, the sound. That was the 3.9 liter, I believe. Actually, you know what? With the Concept, that was the 5 liter. So that one was actually making, I think, a lot more power. It's something that we probably follow up on and see if there's something like what that vehicle had, if it had, because the car that went into the engine that went into the Concept car was supposed to be something that left the mirror in the dust, and then when it went to the new car, it ended up being a smaller engine. We'll go into that here, and it ended up not being as powerful as a mirror, which was unfortunate, but it ended up still being a great car. So we're going to go through some of the evolutions here. So, but why is this car considered so special? Why do people celebrate this thing? For this vehicle? Many of you today may have forgotten this, but there's a reason that this is possibly the most celebrated vehicle in history. And it started 50 years ago. It was unveiled at the 1971 Geneva Motor Show. It was manufactured between 1974 and 1990, overseen by the chief designer Paolo Stanzani under the project name LP112. You need to remember this was coming off the Miura. This was the first car to bear the title supercar. So this needed to be special. It needed to be a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, and also address some of the design flaws that the Miura that really was, because the Miura was something they kind of designed in the basement. A couple of guys, Ferruccio did not want a race car in his team. He didn't like it because that's what kind of ruined his life when it came to when he bought his Ferrari. The problem was he thought the Ferrari was specifically focusing on racing and not on the car itself and the drivers, and that's why he thinks that, you know what I mean, it just kind of ruined the whole thing for him. So that's the thing, is once the Miura had success, though, he kind of had to get on board. So he really kind of championed the Countach and said, okay, now we're jumping in with both feet. And that was the idea. The Countach was going to fix some of the problems that the Miura had. And what came out was, it was an iconic design. It was from House Bertone. That was headed by Marcello Gandini. Italian wedge shape that would be known as, was first introduced in the 1970 Lancia Stratus Zero. But the Countach will get the attention it deserved, unlike the Stratus. But many argue where the name came from when it came to Countach, which I think was kind of interesting. Typically, Lamborghini drew its name from bullfighting, but the Countach was different. Many had described it as the word bat. There's a lot of different things that people thought about, but Gandini, in one of his, I believe he wrote a book about it, but one of the things that he wrote about was it came from an exclamation from a fellow worker that did not speak Italian, when he was surprised every time he would get, excited about something. He'd be like, Countach. So Gandini looked over and said jokingly, maybe we should just call the car Countach, because the guy's saying it all the time. And it was kind of a joke. Nobody took that really seriously. But then later, they had Bob Wallace repeat the term, and he had a specific accent. And when he said the word Countach and it came out the way it did, it sounded very unique, and it kind of just settled in. So that was their deal. So the car at the time was, I'm going to say controversial. A lot of people say controversial. I'm not going to say controversial, but it was more of the idea that it was so cutting edge that I think a lot of people kind of looked at this and went, what's up? And that was because of the wedge design. It was interesting. It was most notable for the unique scissor door configuration, and that would follow the flagship vehicles of Lamborghini through its life. Even today, the Aventador has those specific scissor door features that everybody did. Now, a lot of people will say the scissor doors are designed because the test driver Valentino Balboni, great guy by the way, guy could talk about rust peeling and you'd listen to him all day. But Valentino, supposedly when he backed up, he couldn't see, and they said that they installed the scissor doors. That was not the case from my research or from the stuff that I know. I never asked him specifically, but I should have. But that's the thing is there was other features that were put into the Countach because of the limited rear visibility in it, to allow people like a periscope setup that was allowing people to look out the back. But having driven the cars myself, I can tell you right out of the bat, the easiest way to get out of the car and to back up in it is to literally, you lean out, you push up the scissor door. The scissor door made it easy to do this. Was the door would come up, you would lean over. Trust me, you can reach the pedals from here. You put your foot with the clutch in the gas, and you just kind of throttle through the two, and then you slowly back up that way. And it sounds really weird because you're sitting on the door sill looking out the back of the car, but it's so low slung that it really is, you're not that far from the pedals that you think you just over there and you just, hey, I'm going to look out the back and do this. It sounds really weird. And the first time you do it, you will feel like, ooh, what am I? This is not right. But yeah, once you do it, you're like, yeah, this is easy. I can do this all the time. And it becomes kind of your thing. So yeah. So the engine was an advanced version. Remember the V12 engine that came from the Miura? It was used in pretty much any of the V12s back then for Lamborghini. had gone through its entire stream all the way until the Aventador. The Aventador didn't use it. The Murcielago was the last. The 670 SV, I believe, was the last production vehicle to actually have the motor in it. But it was an advanced version of the Mura's V12 engine, and that started with a 3 point. Remember, the concept car I think was a 5, and then it moved over to a 3.9 liter. But it finally ended with a 5.2 liter, which all these made it to a 5-speed transmission. And it's funny to think that the first car only made about 370 horsepower through its lifestyle. So kind of a big deal. The anniversary, I'm sorry, I got to get my notes here because this is big. And a lot of stuff I kind of like make sure I don't forget stuff. But the anniversary car was the 5.2 liter, and that would finally make 455 horsepower. I just think that's crazy. Think about that. Today, like 400 horsepower to most people right now, I kind of laugh at that and just be like, that's it? Like that's all the car. Yep, that's it. That's all it made. 455 horsepower. Man. But over its run from 1974 to 1990, it sold 1,983 cars. We kind of estimate today is probably 1,500 still in existence. Obviously, vehicles like this, new people are going to crash them. They're going to have problems with them. A lot of people like to restore them so that, the idea of, you guys have seen salvage cars. They get their stuff, they build them back up, and they put them out there. So, and the beauty of was the car was made to be a stronger car. So they weren't, I want to say they were easy to restore, but they weren't the worst to restore. And a lot of people would use them. It's not like I'm going to buy one and have like a parts car. So that didn't happen. But yeah, so the original price for the 1974 car was $72,200, and by 1989, the 25th anniversary car sold for $145,000. Obviously, we was talking about the $150,000 for the one that I got marked up in, I want to say 87. That's general markup. Most of the companies out there that sold these cars, it took money to import them. We'll get into that in a second. But today, that same car would sell for $400,000. So, and I think the going rate right now is around $300,000. For most of the Countaches you're going to see. But crazy enough, the Countach was not designed to sell to its largest market, which was the United States. U.S. buyers wanted them. They went to great lengths to purchase them and import them. And since they didn't have bumpers, they needed to be added, meaning the U.S. Countach usually had a unique look to them. If you have a chance, look it up. There's so many different ways that people put these bumpers on, and they're hilarious. But yeah, very cool. Many would just remove the bumpers once they were approved, so they went right back to where they originally looked. That thing is, the original Countach didn't have a bumper. That was something that people kind of got a little weirded out on. But it wouldn't be until 1985 that the 5000 QV model had a U.S. spec version. And today, with the vehicle being 25 years or older, they don't need to spec anymore. You can just import them, which represented, once they got to the 24-year mark, they did have a big influx of Countaches. They were huge for collectors as well. But we were talking about 1,500 cars, so how many could they be, right? But the Lamborghini became a household name in the U.S. and began to really permeate magazines in around the 1980s. And suddenly it was making common appearances on posters, the notorious Trapper Keepers, such as I had. And then it made a big showing on Cannonball Run, the movie. And it's the design. That design for the Cannonball Run is the one that most people know today. Funny enough, the Cannonball Run car just made a display in Washington, D.C. out front of the Capitol building, which I thought was really crazy. And it just shows how much of a love affair the U.S. has had with the Countach model. And it's been a fun one. So we're just happy to be, kind of a leading edge on that. I wish we could have more than just the 15, like basically 2,000 cars. I'd like to have a lot more than that, but it is what it is. Obviously, people made kit cars. They made copies of them. Various successes. A lot of the kit cars out there, they really look good in pictures, but they don't look good when you go up to them in real life. They're based on Fiero chassis. And then later on, Lamborghini really buckled down on that and basically started lawsuits against people that were trying to copy it. Funny enough, they did do a video with a father-son team that they built a Lamborghini in their basement, put the car together, and he shared it with this kid, at which point Lamborghini actually bought them a real Lamborghini and, let them drive around in that. I don't know if they kept it or if they just let them drive it. I don't know the whole full story for that, but it was very fun to hear. And it's on Lamborghini's YouTube page. You should check it out. But yeah, unfortunately, the Countach had to come to an end. So in 1990, the Countach made its final car. Although it would never roll off the assembly line, the Although it would never, was it? The legacy was part of the history, influence, and future cars. Yeah, so basically, although it would never roll off the assembly line again, the legacy of the car became part of history, and it would influence future cars down the road. In short, nobody forgot this car. Even today, I don't remember ever a time we didn't think about the Countach or think about how cool it was. I believe it made its... it was the fastest production vehicle. I want to say it was 87, 88, somewhere in there. Things that you forget to do the research now that you're on the show, right? But yeah, so we ended up looking into that. Tons of times that it was the fastest car. It really was kind of a weird car up over certain speeds, though. So ask people that own them. I've never really taken up to any kind of massive speed with them. I don't remember how fast I've ever taken a Lamborghini. But yeah, those guys will tell you they're very involved cars, and you need to pay attention to them. It's an actively driven car, so you want to make sure that you're paying attention when you're driving it. So yeah, today the access to the vehicles through social media, it really did blow the car up, and even more so. Lamborghini started finding renewed success moving into the 2000s, bringing out the Gallardo and the Murcielago and a lot of other cars. Now with the SUVs and stuff, they were big, and the retro craze obviously came into full swing. They made a retro Miura. So that was something that they, commonly see redesigns these retro vehicles from fans, and especially on pictures, they just take the Countach and, remake it. But Lamborghini stated when they did the Miura that they did not plan to jump on the retro craze. They said Lamborghini was all about the future and they didn't go back in the past. But hey, that kind of changed when it came to 2021, when Lamborghini was throwing out their new hybrid program platform. They had the Cyan, which was kind of the lead up to it, and now hybrids and electrics they're kind of forcing their hand on this. So they introduced the LPI 800-4, and that would reintroduce the Countach nameplate. And they had a whole new design for it. Like I said, we'll look at the evolution here real quick, and I'll do this again so you can guys kind of see where it was going. But this reintroduced the Countach nameplate, the limited edition run. I think it was like 130 cars that they were going to be able to build, and each car was going to sell for $2.6 million. So that's the thing is I got to show you there. It looks like the Countach history isn't going to die anytime soon. It will live on in clubs, enthusiasts, people who know its roots, and it'll constantly be something that's part of our supercar world from here on in. I just think it's one of those things that you're not going to be able to dodge. It really did. It's hard for me to really explain that. People today, especially younger kids, and it kind of upsets me that like you guys don't know this history, that you don't have the ability or access to it, that it really just it hurts my head that there was a world when the 60s and 70s and there was nothing wedge shape. You had kind of the Ferrari setup. When I was young, the thing for me was it was either Ferrari, Lamborghini, or Porsche. Those were the two things. Ferrari had made the most amount of cars, and by the 87s they had made the Testarossas, but they were producing a lot of cars, and that really hurt the ownership or the values of the Testarossas at the time, because they were kind of overproduced. They changed that when they moved over to the 512, thankfully. But that was the thing is there wasn't many cars. It wasn't until after the success of the Countach that we started to see cars really jump on board with it, like the McLaren F1 that would dominate lane speed records for over a decade, the Acura NSX. Then we started seeing brands that were jumping on MR2 to try to do the platform. So now we're seeing cars that were becoming faster and faster, and they had this platform that worked really well. And it really forced companies like Ferrari to build up to make something that was more consumable by the public. So now you have Ferrari jumping on board doing their 355, which was 348. It is what it is, but 355 really kind of changed everything for them, because now you can't you get an SX over here that's half the price. You got the Corvette that's doing its thing, so you got to make something fast and it's got to be drivable. And then that really opened up the door for them for the 360. And over that entire term, the Diablo was just the car that just sat with us for the longest time. And it really, now that things were becoming more, it was easier to make videos, and we were making videos, putting them on VHS or whatever, recording stuff and putting it out there. People had access to this, and we wanted to have access to be able to see these cars. We wanted to be able to see them in person. And that was the thing, is the unicorn was still always the Countach. So yeah, now today we see Pagani, which was Horatio, who was also involved in the Countach. So Pagani's Zonda, Koenigsegg, all these brands have, in some respects, some little processes they can say thank you to the Countach for bringing them about and making them what they are today. And I think, and that's the thing, is these guys were looking at these pictures on their walls as kids. They continue to learn. Imagine, I think of about how many millionaires out there were created because somebody looked over and said at some point, this is the car I'm going to own. I don't think that they always stuck with that. I think there came a point when, like for me, it wasn't just the Lamborghini. It became this love affair with other cars. So that's why I ended up with, the Porsche. And that's the thing, Ferrari kind of got the bug for a little bit there. So I was into 360s, and that they became very drivable cars now. But the thing is these cars, like the Bugatti, back in the 80s, if you had a car like that, it was, go back and look at an F40. That F40 is probably a big, that is just, it's got a rope for a door. It has no radio. It's all metal. It's like a very unfriendly car. And that was the car that was competing against the Lamborghini, which, they were saying it's a driver-friendly car. And I really, with driving the Diablo is unfriendly, but it's still, I can still drive it. I can take it long range. The Murcielago for me was really the first car that I really felt like I could go and just drive and drive and drive. So yeah, that was a fun car to do. But that's the thing is I'm going to come to the end today. We like to do this show. I want to get this show up to an hour. It kills me. But yeah, so that's the story for the Countach. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun to make. We're going to continue to bring you more stuff. We're going to look into some other tactics, topics. What I want to do down the road here is get some guests that can come on and really take this to the next level. We do have guests. We do have stuff that we do on our main YouTube channel here. And that's the thing is we want to have more of that. So check out some of these. If you're on here, check out some of our other videos. If you're on podcast, check out some of the other stuff. We're going to continue to bring you some new sounds, some new discussion, whatever we got to do. Going to cover some car shows. So like I said, if you haven't had a chance to hit a bell, like, subscribe, whatever you got to do it. Get on here, and we're going to continue to throw some stuff your way. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll talk to you soon. Yeah, you guys have a great day. We'll talk to you then.